Welcome to Napino Knowledge Series webinar number 9, Manufacturing in 2022 and Beyond. My name is John Ciannamea, and I am the moderator for today's session. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping comments. Attendees should send any questions via the chat function, and the questions will be addressed mostly at the end of the panel discussion. The session will be recorded and posted on social media. You will be able to find a link through the Napino website. I ask that the panelists keep their microphones muted unless speaking to avoid background noise. I would like to thank our sponsor, Napino, for organizing and hosting this webinar. I would like to acknowledge and give a special thank you to Sakshi Nagpal and her team at Napino who organized this event. You will hear more about Napino in a few minutes when Vinay introduces himself and Napino. I encourage you to see Napino's website, napinotech.com. If you would like more information from Napino, you can email them at info@napino.com. And also, I encourage you to follow them on LinkedIn. We have a distinguished panel of entrepreneurs doing special work related to Internet of Things products. I would like each panelist to introduce themselves and describe their business. Ed, would you begin for us?
We appreciate everybody attending here this morning to hear about some really relevant topics in our industry. My name is Ed Yenni. I am the founder and president of Logisync. We are located in Cleveland, Ohio. I founded Logisync in 1993 after spending about 16 years in industry. Primarily, that time was spent in the aerospace and defense industries. And it was actually that experience that helped set up the idea for founding the company to do the things that we do. While so many things have changed over those last 30 years, certain things have not changed, surprisingly. They've been incredibly durable. And that is our vision and our mission. Our vision then, as it is now, is that all things around us will someday be connected. They will be able to interoperate and be able to interoperate for the benefit of creating larger systems that have in and of themselves other benefits to them. So our mission within that vision is to work with original equipment manufacturers to provide these smart products with the connectivity and the localized processing necessary to create that kind of an environment to fulfill the vision. Our company is based on sound systems engineering principles. We look at every product as a system. It's a delicate interplay between many factors: hardware, software, user experience, manufacturability, life cycle, all the things that go into good sound systems engineering. We work with customers throughout the entire life cycle, from that aha stage where they just have an idea and it might just be a rough idea in one sentence, all the way through the life cycle of cutting that program into a full-scale manufacturing product. Our talented team lays out printed circuit boards, performs electronics design, lays out circuit boards, writes embedded firmware that runs on those boards. We run formalized test programs to get design verification testing done, and then also agency certifications. We have well-designed or well-established design partner relationships that help us with things like enclosure design, user experience, and other specialty items. Our designs have included, over the years, everything from consumer products that can be purchased at retail stores, all the way through medical products, industrial process control systems, building automation, and food processing equipment. So that's a little background on us. And again, thank you for attending today.
Thank you, Ed. Ivan, would you please tell us about your background and your company?
Ivan Castro. I'm now here joining Paxafe in the past month as the head of growth for cold chain. And I come with a background of over 20 years of healthcare supply chain technology leadership, where I've digitized components of healthcare supply chains around the world, including developing and delivering global IoT capabilities to track the most critical products that travel globally. At Paxafe, our vision is to be the source of truth for cold chain shipments around the world. And we do that by providing not only intelligent hardware that tracks real-time location and condition of products, but also it's amplified by our highly accurate context and prediction engines that allow our customers to take to use actionable insights and take action on shipments instead of trying to make sense of what the data is telling them. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Ivan. Vinay, thank you first for hosting this event, but would you please tell us about yourself and Napino?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ed. First of all, good morning, everyone in the US, and good evening, everyone in India and maybe the rest of the world. I don't know which time zone people are joining from, but I'm so excited to have this panel today and be part of it and talk about what is happening around the globe in the domain of IoT, like where IoT is really powerful technology enabling so many different applications and use cases. I think Ed covered a couple briefly, and Paxafe, Ivan talked about the cold chain monitoring solutions. So a little bit about myself. I'm someone who live, breathe, and smoke IoT for past 10 years, I would say. 8 years professionally and 2 years while I was studying. And before that, I was in US for 10 years. Worked with Goldman Sachs there in the investment banking technology division. I currently manage and run the entity called as Napino Digital Solutions, which is part of the Napino Group umbrella. And that basically focuses on two primary aspects. One is designing a very robust and scalable product for our customers. And second is manufacturing at mass scale. So these are the two areas. Now talking a bit more about Napino, I just want to share 2 slides with the audience to talk a brief about what we do here, and then we can get along with the panel, John, if that is okay. Okay, one second. I'm going to share my screen and let me know when you see the PPT. Hi, John, are you able to see the deck?
I can see your slide.
Awesome. So I think as I covered, like first of all, just describing what we do at Napino Digital Solution, I think pretty similar to what Ed mentioned. The idea is to support our customer from their journey at ideation stage to all the way to the end, like creating value in terms of providing them the product that they need, whether it is in automotive or consumer electronics, which is done at the Napino Group level, or IoT, which is what we do at NDS. Briefly about the company, Napino is one of the leading electronic product design and manufacturer in India. We are in the existence for past more than now 27, 28 years, I would say. Primarily, we started our journey in the automotive industry, providing electronic components and ECUs and different sub-assembly parts for the two-wheeler industry, and then moving gradually to four-wheeler. Across India, we have close to 12 manufacturing plants, 7 manufacturing plants, and 2 centers focused on R&D and design. We manufacture 25 million units annually across the country, and many of our customers are in India, and quite a big chunk in the US and Europe, and it is growing rapidly. We have around 5,000 employees working in the country, between the people in the staff and on the lines, like people who work in the factories or in the manufacturing shop floor. We have 12 SMT lines and 14 assembly lines. We act as reliable supply chain partner to many tier 1 global automotive OEMs, both in and outside India. So between these 2 R&D centers that I mentioned, one is in Gurgaon, which is the north of India, very near to the heart of the capital region called as Delhi, NCR. And the second center is in the west of the country, very near to Mumbai, which is the financial capital. The city name is Pune, a lovely place. So between these 2 areas, we, I think, have around 170 R&D engineers now, as we speak, who work on different types of products, enabling different categories of solutions or applications for our end customer, right? It can be in camera-based products or asset trackers or even like smart speakers and so on. While we work at Napino, we put a lot of impetus and focus on working with our partners. We started our journey, by the way, with Ciannamea from Japan, but currently we also have 2 joint ventures with Continental from Europe. We have done a lot of excellent technology partnership with the likes of Fallbrook from US and Domino from Europe again. At NDS, if I briefly just cover in a minute or so, we offer 3 categories of, I would say, offerings to the end user, right, or to our customers, I would say. The first is full stack ODM services, which I think I covered briefly, that as part of our expertise and core strength, we help our customer to design and manufacture electronic products. Specifically in NDS, we do it for the connected devices or digital devices, I would say. We also offer testing and certification services, both as part of our mass scale manufacturing and also as an independent offering. Then we also realize that while software is really important, hardware is important, but at the same time, hardware is really hard. And to really make a product ready, robust, scalable, and in the right price, you need to look at multiple areas like DFM, design for manufacturability, or optimization of the bill of material. We offer such services as well under value engineering or value analysis, VA and VE. And the last but not the least, because of our expertise and our scale, we have very strategic relationship with most of the OEM in the chipset area and distributors of different active and passive components from across the globe. And because of that, we also enabled a very seamless inventory management and inventory tracking for all the products that we either ship to the customer or we consume as our subcomponents into our manufacturing facility. Second is products and solution space. I think this is the area where we are building our capability to offer to our customers, right? So products does not mean here that we build products as white label Napino branded. The idea is to build capability and make it ready for customers, whether it could be in transportation logistics, like the one at Paxafe, or Industry 4.0, like offering quality assurance using computer vision, or ADAS in electric vehicle or driver monitoring solutions, sometimes it is called as, or even in the traditional ICE engines. And then telecom infrastructures and devices like Wi-Fi routers or gateways. We are also starting to explore and build capability in 5G to launch some 5G enabled devices very soon. Last area, I think that we are building as we speak, and we are like a young startup as well in a practical sense. Technically, we are not a startup, but practically we operate very agile, and because of which we realize that just supporting the capability sometimes is not sufficient. Some of the customers need help on cloud integration, data management, building applications on mobile or browser, giving them support from a hardware lifecycle management, like handling the returns, handling the root cause analysis, warehousing, and etc. And maybe manage support and services down the line that we want to bring to the customer, where you don't have to bother about supporting the replacement of a hardware or checking the health of a device in real time. So I think that's brief about us. I will not spend too much time here, but this is some of the products that we have either designed or manufactured in the past 5 years in the domain of IoT or connected devices. These are some of our research and development capabilities. I'm going to just run past it for now. I think this talks about different radio technologies that we have some experience with, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular, Z-Wave, and Zigbee. This is the screenshot of one of our very, very advanced and high-class manufacturing facility in India. These are some of the devices that we offer for testing as a service, or even consume them for different testing of the product that we build for customer, including water spray, thermal shock, vibration, EMI, EMCs, and so on. I think certification services I covered that we realized that just building a product is not sufficient. You need to offer customer to support the different type of certification for different markets. Given that we are heavily focused on manufacturing as a service, we are glad to say that we have almost every ISO certification out there required to provide the best quality working environment and the quality control processes for the need of the customer. So that's about us for now. Some of the customers, but over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. And now we'll begin our panel discussion. I have a series of questions for the panelists, and I ask the other panelists to feel free to comment without being called upon. So this is really meant to be interactive panel discussion, even though we're not all in the same room. Now, I'm going to begin with Ed. Ed, you've been working in the Internet of Things space since its inception and have seen a lot of changes over the years. How has the product development process changed, and what challenges are you seeing today? What capabilities are customers looking for in Internet of Things product development today? And does it vary by industry?
Thanks, John. A lot of good questions there. So a whole lot has changed in the product development process, and I think if I had to say one thing, it's the speed of the process has really increased, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's the need for things to go more quickly, but a lot of it comes as a result of the integration of tools. What used to be disparate tool sets that people would use that would set themselves up for sort of a linear development process really lends itself to more of an agile type of process now because of the integration of mechanical tools, electrical tools, that sort of thing. I think the reuse of software helps, speed products to market. Open source software that's available that also contributes to that. User experience is forefront in people's minds more than ever. It's always been important, but it's something that really people use to judge the value of a product. Interoperability and coexistence are also things that we've seen that are used to be nice to haves, but now they're requirements. I think you asked a little bit about what challenges. Everybody, I think, would agree that cybersecurity, supply chain, and just the sheer difficulty of trying to navigate the complex landscape. There are so many suppliers of different pieces and parts of hardware and software and technologies for IoT. It requires very sound project management and systems engineering to pull all that together. Last two items you asked were what sort of capabilities. Just like Vinay mentioned, it's that full stack. Everybody wants that full stack. It's very difficult when you have many different items of a program to go out and manage different suppliers. So it's very beneficial to a customer to be able to go to a single source and get the full stack of services. And of course, yes, it does vary by industry. There are some common things, but each industry has its own needs in terms of certifications, verification, test compliance, and that sort of thing. So that's why it's important to have a business system that is agile enough that can be tuned, if you will, for a consumer product versus an industrial product or a medical product.
Thank you. And Ivan, time to market is critical for an emerging technology company, and most times budgets are tight and lead times are long before you can realize any revenues. Sometimes you have to pay your suppliers in advance, and I know that hurts cash flow. How does a company like Paxafe move from beta test to production-ready products? What capabilities would you like to see in companies like Logitech and Napino to make your life easier? And do you partner and leverage resources to accelerate the time to market? So overall, we're just looking for your advice to other emerging technology companies.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first I'll start off with, our beta testing. So I think it's important to know that as an early stage startup, we don't have the luxury of a multi-year cycle to validate, test, and release products to our customers. So we first focus on the core competency and the core capabilities that are going to add the most value to our customers' use cases. And we begin testing there and getting it right, making sure that it's reliable, consistent, and reproducible. And once we get there, that allows us to open up these features to beta testing in a closed fashion to specific customers that let us vet out any real life issues and any real life data that might come through. Now, after that, that allows us to then focus on optimization and driving any nice to have features. But that core, I think, is really important to be able to drive out the value and the results quickly with these capabilities. Now, in terms of the potential needs and what we're looking for from firms like Napino, I think you touched upon it as well, related to the startup costs and how quickly that we can actually get products. So a couple of them would be around, for instance, partnering and not just being a supplier. So what I mean by that would be knowing we're an early stage startup, how do we negotiate payment terms that allow firms like Napino to take advantage of our growth and share in our growth together. That might mean how we manage payment terms that match our own incoming revenue terms with our clients, but it also might mean sharing risk around building buffer of devices so that we can manage the evolution and the ebb and flow of demand of devices. And I think that's just so key these days with fluctuation and variability that I'm sure we'll talk about more. I think I'd leave you with the advice for early stage startups of looking for partners and leaning on partners, especially in our case where our core capabilities are context and prediction and not the hardware. So we rely on vendors like Napino to have strong off-the-shelf offerings that might have 60 to 70% of what we need, but allows us and other small stage startups to drive out product market fit and get those answers before making major investments. So I'll leave you with some of those thoughts.
Thank you. Vinay, when companies look for manufacturers, they generally think of China as the least expensive option. How does manufacturing in India compare today with respect to quality, performance, and cost? Is India a solution to small to medium-sized U.S. customers or for all U.S. customers, for example? Is it the same across various industries?
Yeah, so that's a great question, I think. Before I answer that, I think I just want to add one comment on what I think briefly Ed and Ivan both said. That I think one of the challenge that we see as a solution provider to startups or to mid-sized player in the IoT is that the mindset of not acting like a supplier to them, but thinking of a partnership and growing with them. I think so. One of the true learning that we have in Napino for past many years, both in automotive and then recently in consumer electronics and IoT, working with mid-sized players and small companies as well, is to move fast and offer them something that can make their life easier, whether it is working capital or whether it is the ability to decide what is the MVP really going to be and not spending that long cycle of development in a complete product. Sometimes it is better to go out to the market and satisfy the most important pain point of the customer rather than building all the bells and whistles. So completely agree on that. And I think that is where the point of that cost, time, which is lead time, cost, and quality comes into play, right? Now, before talking about Napino in general, if I talk about manufacturing industry in India, over the past 10 years, I think the industry has grown really well, especially in mobile electronics, like mobile phone manufacturing, I would say. Apple is now manufactured here, and with all the likes of Foxconn and other players setting up their shop in the last few years, like 7 to 8 years, right? So it has helped to build the ecosystem, which has, to a certain extent, helped to improve the lead time, and second, reduce the price, right, or the cost of making a device in India. Now, today, if you will say, if I compare apple to apple for the exact same product between China and India, on the cost side, India is going to be a bit expensive. Not a whole lot, but it will be a bit expensive. I would say between 8% to 12%. It is going to be expensive. The reason being that there are a lot of things that we have to rely on importing from outside India, especially in the component side or PCB. But the advantage that India brings are actually multifold. One, a very, very large and stable English-speaking population that actually creates a lot of difference when customers from the US wants to interact for a longer period of time as a partner, right? So the mindset is not that I'm an EMS shop or a job work shop where you just give me the job and I work on volumes and millions of products, and I don't care about customers giving me 10,000 of units or 100,000 units in a year. And I treat all of them same in the same basket. I think that is what we have realized while talking to a few customers who trusted us, and we won the deals in the last 1 year from Canada, from Germany, from some part of US as well. I think that is where one of the pain point was. Second was firmware development, giving the access to the right firmware setup, the code, the integration of the data, and software development beyond that. I think India does much better job in that area, because India as an IT powerhouse of the world, it has a lot of good software capability, both in embedded and in the other application layers, right? So when it comes to IoT, hardware is a part of it. It's the enabler of that IoT solution, but a lot happens between the hardware and the software, right? About the data, about how the accuracies are tested, how do you actually bundle the embedded edge intelligence on some of the devices, right? So I think as a package, India will be able to provide equally good quality, a bit expensive in the price, and I would say very marginally slower than China in terms of lead time. Whether we will catch up in the next 2 to 5 years, I really think we will, because now there is a lot of impetus and focus by the Prime Minister and the other bodies to build the ecosystem of chip fabrication in the country. In fact, there is a lot of interest there. And coming to Napino, I think most of this point I covered, they apply to us. Napino, I think from a Napino Digital, we want to become like a partner to you, and we are also not a very old company as NDS, right? We are 1.5 years, I would say, but building IoT devices for last 5 years, so there is experience there. But I think we are open to be very transparent. So the most important point, John, I think, is the trust and transparency. We will never say yes for something that we cannot do. We will always be honest in terms of how much time and money it will take, so that there is no surprises to the customer and increment in terms of the cost of the product to them. And third is we will never copy or steal your idea or design and start selling that ourselves. I think that is one of the genetic upbringing of us in India is being honest to people. If we can't do, we will not say that we can do. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. Ivan, Internet of Things products require certifications and testing to meet your customer specifications. From your experience, what are the critical requirements to have a successful Internet of Things product with minimum problems? And how did you approach testing in your products? Was it conducted in-house, or did you use an outside service?
Yeah, that's when I first started getting into IoT, I was surprised by how many certifications were required to operate. And I like to bucket them into three considerations you want to have. You want to consider what it is you're shipping, where it is you're shipping, and how you're shipping it. So as example, if I take cold chain, it's very clear that you're going to need to have NIST certified calibration certificates that ensure the accuracy and the efficacy of the readings. You're also going to require GXP validation of your systems. And Vinay, you talked about the interoperability of the data and the hardware. I think this is sometimes key and missed, that you need that internal validation to ensure that the data and the processes are also valid. Now, if I talk about where you're shipping, what you'll find is that sensors themselves are going to need to operate in all regions of the world to to really be as effective and seamless as possible for global type of shipping situations. So you're going to want to consider things like airline safety regulations, lithium-ion battery regulations, as well as region-specific SIM card and cellular connectivity certificates that are all part of having sensors travel around the world and communicate in a seamless fashion. And finally, I mentioned how you ship. So I touched upon airlines, but clearly you're going to need to have any sensor that you're willing to use on an airline approved by the airline. I touched upon the lithium-ion battery certifications. Those are going to be foundational and prerequisites to getting cargo with a sensor put on an aircraft. So, I think it's key that as you think about your use cases, that you look at those considerations and start to go after solving for them so that you don't run into impediments as you move forward. Now, being that we look for partners to provide us this hardware, we also lean on them to give us these certifications. And so we would lean on companies like Napino to help us with those certifications. And since we're ISO 9001 and ISO 27001, part of our process expects that we have secondary partners that are not only sourcing the devices, but providing us these types of certifications.
Thank you. A lot involved with that. Vinay, Napino is serving customers globally, and certifications and requirements may differ in Europe, India, and the United States. How does Napino ensure products are versatile and can be used across multiple countries? What is your typical process for testing and verification? And what certifications does Napino have which would be valuable for companies like Paxafe?
Yeah, I think I skimmed through one of the very important slide in my presentation. We will share that later. But what we have done at Napino is we have invested heavily in testing setups. So one of the important driver of providing good test services and testing in an existing product is the right tool at hand, right? Example, Ivan mentioned about NIST certified sensors, right? In order to do that, you need the right chamber in order to certify the sensor for temperature and humidity gradients and accuracy. So one thing that we do as step, I would say the important step is having the right tools, the tools which are very standard for across the globe, and have the right resources who are trained on those tools to run the test, right? So there are different type of tests from RF test, which is radio frequency for, especially in IoT, we operate mostly on RF, right? Either Bluetooth or cellular 4G or 5G or maybe other bands and frequencies. Second is when we think of customer who wants to sell a product globally, let's say a camera product which is used for capturing the image of a driver to process the use case like whether the driver is sleeping while driving, right? Driver monitoring behavior. Now, there are different regulations. In Europe, there is GDPR, right? That strictly binds the compliance of data security and privacy. In US, there is a corresponding data protection law. India has its own India data protection, for example. Now, to answer your question, how would this vary? I think at the premise, they all need a secure device that should not be easily have a backdoor entry or easily hackable, number one, right? For example, having a proper authentication or onboarding mechanism. And second, of course, is the security in the application layer. So in order to achieve that, what we do is we ensure that first the design of the hardware is done to comply with most of the generic requirement across the globe, and then do the specific customization. Maybe GDPR want a feature that a user should be allowed to have an option that forget me, right? And I think Europe is like, don't remember my settings or don't remember me after 7 days or something like that, right? That can be a simple option. So that can be a combination of firmware changes and certain things that might be needed. But let's say there is a specific requirement from a hardware perspective. Let's say the European airline needs a very different requirement that the radio cannot be turned on when the plane takes off. And US wants a different thing, maybe I'm just making a hypothetical example that it is okay for the radio to be on, but it should not be active, okay? So these two might differ in what need to be achieved. So we ensure that during the design stage and during the certification requirement capture stage from the customer, we understand what need to be applied there. And last, I think a very important point is when we give quotation for any proposal of any product, I think a lot of time there will be customers who will not think too much about data security or testing and other certifications. Sometimes they are not aware, or sometimes they are aware, or sometimes they are not willing to pay for something that is going to cost a little bit more. So we try to ensure that we take that kind of a consent, that either you pay this delta or you take this risk that you're going ahead with something like this, okay, in your product. So of course there is as I said, it's partnership with the customer, and we try to understand what need to be delivered to them in the end product, right, for them. Yeah.
Thank you. Ed, designing an IoT product that is cost effective and has a long life is ideal. What do firms like yours do to increase the probability of success and reduce development costs, but at the same time ensure that the product is designed to have a long run? And do you have a few examples that would help illustrate those cases?
That's an interesting question, John, and this kind of got set up by some of the discussion we just had previously. There's an old engineering adage saying, "Good, fast, and cheap. Pick any two." And really, that's the balance in the engineering world that we try to achieve and optimize that. So I think the one-word answer to achieving that balance is really to have a solid architecture. And that is true for both in the hardware and the software side. If the software is written too close to the hardware, every time there's some kind of an upgrade, then there's going to have to be a change. So engineers need to think in terms of modularity in every step of the way. And secondly, standards-based. Everything should try and be standards-based. There has to be a good reason to go in a proprietary direction, because if things are not standards-based, then they likely will not withstand the test of time. Some good examples of that, I think about a product of our own that we released in early 1996. I received an email 2 weeks ago asking some questions about. I can't believe that some of these products are still in the field. This is a gateway device that converts from a proprietary serial-based protocol to an open documented standard. That gateway went into applications, everything from 900 feet up in smokestacks to look at smokestack opacity monitoring. It's in the FAA. It's in building automation systems for controlling HVAC. So that was a good example of one that withstood the test of time. Other things that we've done in the telecom industry for monitoring and control of power systems, typical life cycles for those products can be 25 to 30 years. Now, having said that, in today's world, with the accelerated rate of change in technology and things, it's going to be harder and harder to get some of those long runs. I think it's fair to say that designing products today, in many cases, they won't see a 30-year run. But it again gets back to the aspect that I was saying about having the modularity. And then lastly, Ivan brought up, which is a very good one, about working with people that already have something almost like what you need. Most applications aren't all that unique, only at a thin application layer. Below it, it's moving data, it's doing sort of common functions. So whenever you can rely upon something that is tested, validated, and whatever, that's only going to help that problem.
Thank you. Do we lose Vinay? We may have a temporary technical issue, but Ivan, being a small company, depending upon your suppliers, what challenges have you faced with respect to supply chain issues? Everybody keeps hearing about the long delays and you can't get this and that. Do you use multiple contract manufacturers or have sub-assemblies made at different locations to overcome the risk? What do you do as an emerging company?
Yeah, we do, and we have also seen that same impact that feels like everyone's dealing with shortages and supply crunches. So, over the past couple of years, we have seen in particular some components that have been harder to find than others, and what we've done to mitigate that is more advanced planning. We had an exercise with one of our current suppliers and looking at particular components and forecasting over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, what does that inventory potentially look like, and how do we build that inventory to mitigate any impact of risk there. So I think that was one huge thing that we did that I would suggest others do. Additionally would be to look for secondary suppliers. So I mentioned that as part of our ISO certification, we need to have secondary suppliers as backup, and that helps us mitigate any of the risks of having these component crunches impact our ability to serve our customers.
Thank you. And I see Vinay is back. And Vinay, we're talking about some supply chain issues. This week I heard a story from a CEO talking about being unable to finish production of products because of one component being missing. So he had a large amount of inventory that he could not turn into cash. You have companies that are hoarding because they can't get materials. Does a big company like Napino have an advantage because of your purchasing power? And are you able to keep up with customer demand during this supply chain crisis?
Great. So first of all, sorry, actually my daughter was crying. She's 3.5 months old, and suddenly she started crying a lot. So I had to just go and look at her. My apologies. It's also funny to see that my name as the last name is Napino. By the way, my last name is not Napino, it's Vinay Solanki. The Napino is in the bracket. I was looking at the name. So to answer your question, I think it's a very challenging situation for the past 1.5 years almost. And what we understand is going to continue for another year or so. Now there is a prediction that with the what is happening between in Russia or Ukraine situation is going to even have some additional impact on how the supply chain of especially the chip fabrication units is going to get impacted. Specifically, if I talk about IoT, IoT is one of the very interesting industry because there is a lot of variety and variability. So there is not much standardization right now as we speak. In automotive, Napino is able to manage it very well because automotive has a very standard cycle of development. You get a new car every 2-3 years, a new model. So you have a prediction. You have a similar type of component. An ICE engine is an ICE engine, and an EV is an EV, right? They all need similar type of setup, right? They might differ in the power ratings and other stuff. So in automotive, I think Napino basically does two things. One is, of course, pre-buying of inventory with the predictions and the projections that we get from the customers. But at the same time, of course, does that create some challenge of over inventory management and longer inventory cycle, turnaround cycle, which is a very important cost to a manufacturer like us. We do have to bear that to a certain extent. But the idea is also to see what we can do local and what we have to go for imports. I think the more local purchasing can be done or just in time or at least near the production cycle, that is a better option. In IoT, as I said, the challenge is standardization. So if for example, QuickTel works in one product, maybe a SIMCOM will work in another, and because of various reasons, it could be price, it could be lead time, it could be the design requirement, it could be the requirement of the product in terms of what processing power it needs and so on, right? So it's a challenging situation from an IoT perspective to really estimate the volume and pre-buy certain common components. But we do one thing, we segregate active and passive components. Active are the ones that are more expensive, higher lead time, like controller, MCUs, batteries, or MOSFETs and other things. Passive are the ones which are common across most of the product, like capacitor and so on. So we do ensure that the passives are readily available for us whenever we need to get them, either they are in the inventory or locally available. In active also, with the increasing volume in one category, which is asset tracking industry for us, I think we are able to now start doing some prediction and manage our supply chain with our partners globally. And some of the partners, because of the volume that we buy from them, also gives the advantage, I think, to your point, John, that because of the scale that we purchase, at times we get a preferential price or a lead time from them, especially at least from a perspective that we can provide something to the customer. Like Paxafe say, give me 10,000 and the whole world is going loose, and at least even if not 10,000, can we supply 5,000 to them with whatever supply chain channel we can take advantage of, right?
Thank you. And I've been getting some questions from the audience, so I would like to throw out a few questions for the panel, and please, anybody can jump in and answer the question. In the near future, how big is the importance of customization in manufacturing going to be? Does anybody want to try that?
Ed, you.
I think it's a great question, and it's going to be more and more important. The term mass customization is in fact the future. Many times that will occur through software. That kind of makes it easy, but then that has an impact on testing and things like that in a manufacturing environment. Devices also have to be commissioned and connected to cloud systems in a manufacturing environment and things as well. So some of that customization will in fact occur in those environments. So I think our opinion is on the answer to that question is it will become increasingly important as time goes along.
Yeah, and to add my view, I think perfectly, I think what Ed said, there is also one very important area is what kind of customization is expected in the product, right? Now, when you think of customization in the software, right, it is easier compared to customizing the hardware. One area that we are trying to build is a platform with something called as daughter card logic, right? It's like having a generic PCB ready for a product with some sensors already been integrated and tested to a certain level, right? And making it at least 70% ready for that industrial use case or the vertical use case. And now if a customer A comes and say, hey, I don't want GPS, and a customer B says, I want to add a lux sensor, luminosity sensor. So maybe if the platform is ready, I would be able to do rapid prototyping or rapid MVP development with that readiness of the platform, the hardware platform. That is, I think, is going to be important. Again, it is not easy. I think it's very easier said than done in hardware. But to a certain extent, maybe the industry, like the players like us or Logisync, we can probably come out with certain models and make certain features ready on a shorter turnaround time if they are pre-tested and pre-integrated in some form or shape.
Vinay, I would just only add to that what you're saying there resonates with me. That I see while it's going to be important, we touched upon it here before, of having a core platform that we can iterate off of, something that works and is consistent, and that might be some of the key aspects of, say, the communication or the registering of logging of the data. Some of where I see that customization could occur, that's only, say, incrementally a change to the platform, could be things like in the corner cases of size or in the ranges of conditions that devices have to live in. But certainly it would be beneficial that there's a core platform you could start off of to move quick.
Question, I think it's directed to Vinay. How important is it to have DFM services for a manufacturing company?
Okay. I think it's very, very important. So some of the experience we have in the industry is that many times companies who build prototypes, they think it is after prototype, the next step is manufacturing, or after creating a small MVP or a sample, you just can straight away go onto the line and start mounting the components on the PCB. That's not true. There is a lot of things that need to be done between a proto to a manufacturable product. And that is where DFM comes into play. DFM stands for Design for Manufacturability. There is also DFA, sometimes used DFT, designed for testing or designed for assembly. But let's stick to DFM. I think we feel that as a manufacturer, we want to educate the customer, specifically in the IoT domain, that there is a very important step in terms of product validation testing and engineering validation testing, where you need to look at whether the product is something that can be manufactured at a scale, right? And there are so many different caveats that can be looked upon if you use the right DFM tool and the right knowledge that can be combined with the tool outcome to offer to the customer. One example I tell you, like we were making an offline data logger. It's an offline temperature and humidity monitoring device for one of our customers. There is no connectivity. It is a USB enabled product that you just plug it into your laptop to capture the data in a configuration tool. And after we created the product and we tested everything, we went to some of our suppliers and also inside using a tool, we realized that just rotating the MCU by 160 degree or 180 degree, you can actually make the product more reliable and robust as per the discussion, because it reduces the length of the power line between the MCU and the different sensor and the battery, and the amount of interfaces that it needs or the pin configuration that it has. I think that was a very good learning for us and for our customer to realize that even though the first product was ready, it could have become even more stable and more robust. I think going back to Ed's point, he did something in '96 and he got a mail about it a few weeks back, right? I also want to see that. That's my dream, that I roll out something in the market today, and 20 years down the line, my customer will say it's still working, man. So that is my dream. Hopefully, if I'm still in the in the IoT industry in the next 20 years. So I think DFM is very crucial. It's I think the very important part, and that is where for player like Ed and myself, it is important that the customer are informed and educated that this is all is important. It takes time. So sometimes I think Ivan said startups don't have the luxury of time, right, to go to market. So I think the decision needs to be taken that how much, in what scope you want to deliver this, and where can you take cuts and where you should not take shortcuts if possibly.
Thank you. Ed, can you give us your view on what the future holds for Internet of Things?
Certainly. I think one of the things that's most exciting to me is obviously there's the technology developments that we're going to see, is that things like 5G are going to allow IoT to be more pervasive. It's going to be everywhere. Advancements in power scavenging technology and in battery technology and low power operation means that we can put devices, wireless devices, anywhere, and just they'll be all around us, and we won't even know that they're there in some cases. So in many cases, IoT will be there and you won't even know it's there, but we'll see the effect of it. It will be making us safer. It will be saving energy. It will be delivering other benefits. But I think most exciting to me is if we look at IoT as the third wave of the internet, as it's often been referred to, I don't think that the most exciting applications are even out there yet. Just like when the second wave of the internet occurred and we had broadband and mobile and all these things, before YouTube and eBay and Facebook and all of these applications really came out, it was just a capability. I don't think in this third wave of the internet, the IoT, I don't think the real excitement has come yet. And to me, that is really big, because IoT will be transformational and it'll be critical as we go forward to our survival, really, in terms of being able to feed people and keep them safe and all the other things that are important to everybody.
Thank you. Ivan, do you think Internet of Things products will be pervasive and touching all aspects of our lives in the future? And how will your business practices change over the next 2 years to take advantage of this?
Yeah, I think in short, I think it will. And Ed touched upon something that I agree with, that we'll likely know that it's embedded in various parts of our lives, but it won't be so obvious. We'll see the end result through context and predictions shared with us or insights. Now, what I do see is that from our own business processes changing and how I see IoT becoming pervasive is going to be an evolution. And I agree with you, Ed, again, that I don't know if we know exactly what it's going to look like, but for firms like Paxafe, where we're focused on the context and prediction around the data, it's going to challenge us to stay ahead of the evolving use cases that are being driven by the changes of the form factor and the reliability of the devices, so that we can continue to make most sense out of the information and serve it up in ways that create a lot of value. That may be in not only the data, but it could be in any type of embedded or integrated system that are going to start seeing these devices within it already.
Clearly, AI and machine learning are going to really drive some of these applications that we're talking about.
Yeah, fully agree, Ed. If I reminisce on my early experiences in IoT, I think it was at first 4 or 5 years ago, it was magical to see a dot on the map, but it quickly becomes old, and you have to start taking that data and realizing that you can't mine all that data as a human. It's a machine problem, and the machine intelligence has to be there to help us be more human and act accordingly.
Yeah, nice way to put it.
Right. And just to add, I think to that point, I think my view is that I think perfectly said by Ed, right? In the second internet revolution, there was this Yahoo and eBay that created really the cookie cutter application industry, where everyone said, okay, there is social media and then there is online, right? People can just go and talk to each other. My view is that IoT is going to stay like a data enabler. It's going to be that backbone of enabling the capture of data from devices. And data is the new oil, right? So it is going to be that crucial that is going to become, I feel, this is my view, like it might become a pipe to give you the data that you need. But what will become more relevant or maybe scalable is the convergence of IoT with other technology that will bring the real value. IoT with AI, I think we are talking, or IoT with blockchain, or IoT with virtual reality for enabling metaverse, or IoT with some other technology. I don't know. I think what I feel is that as a standalone, it has a lot of power, but not. It doesn't transcend into the actual application. It only transcends there when the real value is given to the end or to the customer, right? Where you actually start converging it with other technologies together. That's what I feel. Yeah.
Yep, and one last question, and then we're going to start wrapping up. We're coming up on the close here, but someone asked, what are the key qualities when it comes to identifying an ODM partner? So I'll throw that out there. Each of you may have a different perspective, but if we could do that quickly.
I'll start. I think reputation is important. You need to make sure that that partner has actually done what they say they're going to do for you. So looking at their expertise. I think the strength of their relationships, whether that be relationships with contract manufacturers or other design partners, is important. And the ability to understand the regulatory path to getting devices out there that meet co-location requirements, cybersecurity requirements, and things like that. I guess that was only 3, but I'll start with that, or stop with that.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and say that I would say quality and reliability, especially in the kind of space that I'm in around cold chain, it's important that comes forward.
Vinay, do you have any?
No, I think between Ed and Ivan, they covered pretty much of it. I think only one more additional point could be I think it's like basically the trust and the reliability in terms of the transparency they offer to the customer.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the hour mark, and I want to thank everybody for participating. I think from the discussion, it is clear that there are some supply chain challenges in the market, that Internet of Things will continue to grow and become very, very prominent in a lot of different applications. We don't know the full effect of it, as our panelists were saying. We're going to see more of it. We also see that India is up and coming and a major manufacturing center that many people are looking to in the world to help solve their problems. I want to thank the panelists for sharing their views and our sponsor, Napino. You can find more about Napino's capabilities at www.napinotech.com. You can always email info@napino, Napino.com for more information or to engage with us. And of course, we want to thank our attendees. Without you, this discussion would have been meaningless. The session video will be available in 5 to 10 days on Napino's YouTube channel. We encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube and LinkedIn channels so you are notified when the next event is scheduled. We would like to hold such events regularly, maybe monthly or quarterly, and we welcome any suggestions from the audience on topics you may be interested in hearing about. Thank you again, and I wish everybody a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ivan, Ed, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.